So this is the October 28th Climate Action Committee meeting. And we kind of have a full agenda. There are a lot of visitors. And I suspect they are wanting to comment about the item about the Doug White Fields. Which is at the very end of the meeting, but I'm gonna say we should probably move that to the chair's comments or follow the chair's comments.
Okay,
Just be respectful of people's time.
sure.
If there are other people that wanted to join, and later expecting it to be at the end, they will miss out. But, I think, we can do that. So the first thing on the agenda will be, approving minutes of June, August, and September.
Except it looks like two people took minutes on June. So-
Yes.
Yeah, two
I-
people, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
make the suggestion that we use Janet's minutes
Sounds
and
good.
ignore Gavin's minutes. Because Janet took the effort to put those together.
And if you have any, I can reconcile if we have anything, but yours looked solid, so I think it's okay.
Okay, well, I watched the video to make the minutes.
thank you for
I mean,
that.
I didn't hear from you for so long.
Yeah, I had told Brad that I thought I had sent them, but I only edited them and hadn't submitted them.
Oh,
There was
okay,
a
that
major head
happened.
bonk.
Okay, all right.
Okay. You shouldn't fall behind, too far behind the minutes. So let's see, June minutes, I appreciate anybody who does it, of course. I sent Janet a couple of couple of typos that the word processors suggested a dot here and stuff. And Bob Shatton's name spelled,
No, sorry.
But that's
yes.
just one letter?
Yeah, I did see your edits and they all look good
No.
to me.
nothing substantive. Did anybody else have any comments on the June minutes? Okay, someone want to propose to accept them?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Gavin made a motion. Any seconds?
A second.
Catherine seconded it, okay. All in favor of accepting the June minutes
As amended.
as amended? Very minor trivial amendments. That would be,
I raised my hand.
four of us here and of the two out there,
I'm abstaining. I was not present.
not present, okay. And Catherine, what about you?
I was-
Seconded.
I was there, but I wasn't actually an official member at that meeting, so I don't know.
Okay, you shouldn't,
Then I probably
Hey.
should.
How you doing? Okay, anyway, it passes 4-1 and Catherine wasn't a member.
So
Okay,
it's unanimous.
and then we have August minutes that Jerry took, and I read them over. I didn't see anything that that raised any questions. Looked fine. Did anybody have any changes for those August minutes?
I looked at them, I didn't see anything.
Okay,
That we accept the August minutes.
looks like Jerry did a perfect job.
That's the first time ever then.
Okay, motion to accept it?
I just moved.
So
Second.
moved, okay, you got it, and is there a second? Is that,
Yeah,
well,
okay.
got it, all in favor of accepting the August minutes?
I'll abstain, I wasn't present.
Okay. So we got 5 and 5 to 0 to 1. Okay, got it. And then September. I sent those out. Did everybody have a chance to look at those?
Yes, I looked at them. There was one very minor thing that I saw for the electric vehicle showcase. I think you said, and I thought I had it in front of me, but I don't. I think you said 18 different models of cars.
Yeah.
Or 18 cars, there was some duplicate models.
Okay,
So, but that's a very minor change.
Okay, so
that.
if you send that to me, I'll make that change. It's
I can do
not,
that.
any others?
I had just gotten to you that, there were some spots where you said Brad without
Oh,
specifying.
yeah, I
that.
changed that already.
Okay, you got those changes. You're good.
Got that, figured, I wouldn't want people to get confused. Okay, motion to accept those minutes
So moved.
with the amendment? Okay, was there a second on that?
Second,
Yeah, okay.
Second.
Everybody in favor of accepting the September minutes with that
I
Yeah,
wasn't here, so I'll
change?
change.
I wasn't here
Okay.
either, but no.
I wasn't here either, so have to abstain this one too.
Okay, well, people, so we have Cheryl was here, right?
Nope, I was gone.
Abstain.
You're abstaining, so we have 3, nothing.
Hmm.
And, some abstentions.
And to clarify, who's on minutes tonight again?
Me.
So now Cheryl, you're taking minutes tonight? Cause I think Catherine is also,
Oh, well, Catherine, you're great. You go ahead.
but I wanted to,
I'm happy to
so-
defer to you, if you would prefer.
Oh, that's fine. It's never great on an iPad. But you're doing great.
so we,
Glad I checked, I thought we had
That's,
two.
I know, thank you.
I sent out a doodle poll for the next meeting date, which is gonna be November 20th. At 7 PM. And not everybody responded. Is there anybody who knows they can't make the 20th? I think you were the one that might not be able to make the 20th. There were no perfect dates.
Yeah,
But as far as everybody knows, they can make it besides Cheryl.
yeah, I think I can too, but I'm not positive.
Okay, good. So that's the next day. Let's see. For chair updates. I didn't have much to say. I didn't have any updates.
okay, well, I have a couple.
Okay,
I attended the school sustainability meeting last Thursday. And Brian Fools was there. One of the things he was talking about was the solar at CMS. And he was saying that they weren't putting in the support for the conking solar while they were doing the construction, because it seemed to be too complicated, and it wasn't quite clear to me when that was happening. So maybe we need to talk to Janice Duffy to find out what's happening.
so well, this is, so that's for the solar canopy.
That's for the solar canopy.
They didn't
Yes.
put in this,
Well,
didn't
they've
put,
got to put the supports in, but they, for some reason, during construction, it was too complicated, too disruptive to do it at that time, which seemed to me. odd,
okay,
But anyway,
as long as they put the wiring in,
uh,
I assume.
good question. Yeah.
I
Yes.
don't know, I don't, have a,
And I think it was a financial consideration. I think they would have loved to open, with the solar installed, but he said it was a savings of over $1 million. So
So who said it was a savings of $1 million?
I'm not sure why, Brian Folds, who reported, I was at that same meeting, and I don't know why. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that it would cost more when you already have construction. I think it had to do, like Jenna said, with maybe coordination between CMLP and the solar and the on-site construction. But for whatever reason, doing it during the construction phase was more expensive than doing it after.
So
okay,
this is a very curious development for a couple reasons. First, the school was obliged to follow through on a town meeting warrant article such that the school would be solar ready when construction was finished. That's the first thing. The second thing that's curious is CMLP, as I understood it, committed to having the arrays operational at the time that the school would open. So I don't understand it. I mean, Eric, do you have any insight to any of this? This sounds like an outright breach of expectations.
Well, what I do know, from some recent light board meetings is that there have been some challenges with the canopy solar in terms of, the anticipated costs. And I think some supply chain issues. So I think there have been delays in trying to move forward with, the solar. And I think it has more to do with, some of the cost issues and then going out to bid and then maybe having to go out to bid again because costs were much higher than anticipated, for some elements of that. I don't know if it was just the canopy or anything else, but I know there was some delays, having to do with that. And so I'm imagining that factors into it somehow, but I don't have too much more detail, than that, but I'm happy to circle back with Brian, and the light board and also, with some of the folks at CMLP to see if I can get any more details about it.
So the school's supposed to open February vacation? Is that the,
So Brad,
yeah,
I did go to that meeting, the light plant meeting, and it is delayed, but they're still expecting the solar to be installed by the end of the summer. They don't want to get in the way of the schools getting into that building in February, but there was some discussion about an RFP and looking at some procurement, and there are some prices that are falling also, so, but I think they're on top of it.
so end of the summer of 25. they
Yes,
expect to
yes.
have that. Okay,
And I have more details, but I don't want to read it here.
Was that the rooftop solar or the canopy
It's
solar?
solar altogether,
Okay.
so it'll be in the summer.
Just curious if they had any of her overrides that, or financial challenges that they didn't seem to care about. I don't know, I just.
They want to get separate pricing on a canopy, so I think there's an advantage for them waiting financially, but,
yeah, yeah.
but it'll be in the summer.
Well,
And
it's a
I
good-
would also just say, I don't believe that we said solar would be installed with the go live when they moved into the school, having been on the light board.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I think we knew all along that may not happen,
Okay,
but it had to be ready so that it could be installed.
okay. So there's some discrepancy about whether they said that would be live on day one. Would be done,
No.
live on day one of
Wendy.
in the fall.
I think I recall that, I'm forgetting his name, the previous light plant director made
Yeah.
that statement publicly during a meeting at the townhouse, where CMLP was presenting all the plans. I
I don't
mean,
doubt that.
it may or may not make any difference at this point in terms of exactly what he said, but
Right,
I did hear that.
okay,
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'd like to just observe this conversation is why words matter. Regardless of whether there was some person making one discrete commitment to do something by a date certain, pains were taken all along to ensure that this was a school building that was net zero ready and not net zero.
yeah,
And there were some of us in this community who were very concerned about that language, and this is why. Now we will have several months of kids in a school that will be not net zero.
right.
And there is not an actual commitment to do it by a date certain yet.
All right,
So, as we go forward in the future, as advocates for our environment and resilience and our climate, we need to recognize the difference between actual zero emissions, which is preferable, net zero, and net zero ready,
right,
which does not mean net zero.
right. Those were my words, by the way. Net zero really, because
You weren't the only
we
one.
wanted
using
to, get it through. Okay,
Okay, I have more.
okay,
Remember, there was somebody from Minerva Action came to one of our meetings a few months ago.
yeah,
Okay,
Rob,
well, Matt, I remember this, the the environmental science teacher at the high school said that, people from Minerva Action had come to the school and done a whole lot of, measurements of, carbon storage in the trees.
Oh,
And they were going to come back for another project later on. Do you remember, Catherine, do you remember what the other project was?
Yeah, one of them is the plastics, which is really interesting. So bringing in water bottles, other sources of water, and then testing water quality, and they can actually trace the microplastics. So at one school they did it, and the data suggested that the Dasani water bottles had the worst microplastics. So it'll be interesting to see what they find out. But I think that's, given our town ban on plastic water bottles and just our, urging of using reusable non-plastic water bottles, I think that'll be an interesting lab to do to see what the microplastics are.
oh, yeah, you should ask him about that. That's
And
interesting. That's
the other
not
thing-
easy to do.
The other thing he wanted me to advance was, the Doug White Fields, Charlie Parker discussed at the last meeting that, that $100,000 had been set aside to study, what was going to happen to them. And we requested a meeting with the town manager. And we have a meeting that is set up to discuss the process of what happens next,
Okay,
on Thursday. And that's about all I have to say.
yeah, I mean, we went through that, last month. The concerns to speak to the town manager are about, the climate aspects and the environmental aspects, and not,
Right, well, certainly this committee has environmental and climate
and you,
interest, yes.
and if I remember right, you just wanted, it to be an open evaluation, including grass and, turf as a different option.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So there's a lot of people here, both online and a couple people in the room, who are interested in this, I believe. And did you want to say something or?
Sure, I don't know if people just hear me or if I should sit in a certain chair or whatever.
Yeah, tell us your name and.
Sure, my name is Eric Jarnryd. I live on 61 Hubbard Street.
Eric.
Jarnryd, Jarnryd. I live on Hubbard Street, and I was one of the original members of Friends of CC Playing Fields, and I still am. I'm the treasurer of Friends of CC Playing Fields. And about 18 years ago, we've signed an agreement with the regional school district as well as the town to build the fields.
Yeah,
And in the intervening, I think it's about 18 years, we've also been maintaining the fields and putting together a fund for amortization, i.e. replacement of the fields themselves, because we always knew that they had a useful life of anywhere between 13 and 16 years. So we're coming up against that period of time, and there is a lot of evidence that the fields are worn out after play from over 4,000 athletes per year between the user groups not related to the high school and those related to the high school. And so we stand by to take that project on, but we do not think that there is any possibility that the project could be on natural grass for the very simple reason that the product could not take the impact that the 4,000 users per year would be putting on it. And we did a lot of studies back 16 years ago, and we're prepared to do other studies this year as well, just to underline the fact that it's simply not realistic for us to use the grass product. Our commitment is to replace turf with turf. There are a lot of turf products,
right.
newer turf products that have greater performance attributes. And so that is our position, and that's what we would like to do.
Okay. We don't, I mean, I've coached on the turf fields and stuff like that, as well as the grass, and I don't have an opinion as to, we don't weigh in on how many field hours used, but we will, be, I believe, talking about the PFAS problem issues and the disposal and, climate part. That's where we'll consider ourselves.
May I also
Okay.
add one second thing? There's a study that we would be happy to share with you from the EPA and the CDC. That was dated in April, that found that there is no more exposure for athletes using the fields to rubber crumb than there is in other circumstances in their lives. And that's something that we'd be happy to share with you as well.
Okay, could you send that?
Of course,
That would be, maybe you can send that to Eric Sims
sure,
and,
absolutely.
and to that.
Thank you.
I'm the sustainability director for the town.
Terrific. Yes, I'll get your email afterwards.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay,
There's actually a few hands up,
Hands
online,
coming
although
up,
only, there's
okay.
only a few, not all of them are showing up there.
so let's see, Elizabeth Leonard had her hand up first, presumably.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to make a comment. I am a proud soccer mom and have spent many, many hours at the turf. And so I was informed this morning that this issue would be considered at your meeting. And I took some time to review the climate action and resilience plan. It's so detailed, really lovely. I looked at the 4 principles from 2011, and I saw the 4th one about meeting human needs fairly and efficiently. And I wanted to bring up some particular qualities of the turf fields that I feel are quite important. As you may know, youth sports there are a lot of different leagues. Kids play a number of different sports. Some teams are quite expensive to play on, and some teams are much more affordable. And so Concord does a wonderful job of having not only the Concord Carlisle Youth Soccer, but also the Strikers United Club, which is a town-based soccer club that's much more reasonably priced than clubs that practice in other towns or, are travel around the country or something like that. So I wanted to bring up that there's this big need. I think one of the wonderful things about growing up in Concord is how many sports teams there are to participate in. And I think that there's a big equity issue here that I think really should be looked at and may trump some of the smaller pieces around plastics and things like that. Because if these fields aren't available, then children have to, if they want to play as much soccer or field hockey or lacrosse, they'll be looking for teams in other towns, which adds commuting, adds expense. So from an equity point of view, that turf is a really big, important thing. As beautiful as grass is, it's not as sturdy, and it doesn't hold up to as many hours of play. There are cancellations for rain, and a lot of things like that. And so I really wanted to bring up the equity issue, but I also wanted to ask if committee members had had a chance to be at the Doug White turf when it's in action, which honestly is most of the time besides school hours. And so I would encourage you to be there in the environment to see how, it is turf, but it is within all of these beautiful trees. It looks like there's some pretty amazing stormwater management going on. And I don't think anyone's advocating additional impervious surface. So I would invite you as part of your process to be at the turf, to see all the families engaged and to see how many children and youth are served by this in a way that would not happen were it replaced with grass.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pamela Dritt. Do you have a comment?
Yes, 13 Concord Green. I understand how much, how well-intentioned and how nice and the friends of Doug Whitefield and the people that put the the turf in to start with felt. But I want to push back against the idea that grass cannot hold up to the same amount. That is belied by the natural grass turf fields that are all over in use as much as that field is in use. And there are new scientific discoveries that we have made in the last few years that are definitely advantageous to actual grass, including new forms of grass seed that do hold up better, at least as good as the artificial turf. The heat generated from artificial turf also that natural turf does not do, also knocks out our ability to use some of those fields. As anybody who was at the town meeting there can attest. The injury rate, there are professional soccer teams. The World Cup women's team was forced to play on artificial turf and very much argued against that. But the main thing I want to talk about is the economic impact. It is going to be very difficult to dispose of the artificial turf when its life has ended. There is only one spot in the United States that currently takes it, and that is not going to last very long because the new discoveries of the dangers to the watershed from PFAS, which is involved in this, the cost to redo it every 20 or so years is significantly more than the cost of doing the natural turf, and the natural turf is healthier. The idea that there isn't evidence that the kids are exposed to this toxin any more than they are in other areas of their lives is not convincing. There's no need for them to be exposed to the toxin at all.
Thank you. I want to make sure that everybody knows we're not going to be deciding on this. We're just asking for the town to do a balanced decision process. But thank you, Pamela.
We need to protect our kids' health.
Agreed. Dennis Morgan.
Hi, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Dennis Morgan. I live on 319 Holdenwood Road. Real quick. So first, why do we care? Why are we speaking up here? As Eric said, these fields are used by over 4,000 youth athletes a year. The usage is extremely high. I'm not sure it's appreciated how much these fields are used. They are used, there are during the school year, there are kids on the fields from 2 p.m, often until 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. That is a level of usage that no grass field would ever be able to be sustained. And then if you take rain into consideration, these fields get shut down when it rains, which then affects those thousands of athletes having a chance to play. Now, why should we not be restricted from moving forward? As Eric mentioned, so contrary to what was just stated, CC Fields has money, $1.5 million in the bank to pay for both the removal and the replacement of the turf. This is solely funded. It will have no expense to the town of doing so. However, if it goes the other way and the town breaks its agreement with CC Fields, so that agreement to fund the replacement is done per an agreement with the town. Those funds will not be used to fund a grass replacement. And 100% of those costs will need to be covered by the town taxpayers at a time when taxpayers are getting increasingly frustrated with the increases in taxes that we're seeing every year. That's
Yeah.
not a cost that we want to see as taxpayers when it can be totally provided by private funds. And again, contrary to what was just stated, as Eric mentioned, there's a 211-page EPA study that just came out in April showing that there's no evidence of adverse health effects from turf fields compared to grass fields. And finally, I'm no scientist on this, but, are grass fields so environmentally friendly? They need to be watered, fertilized, controlled for weeds, and they're going to be mowed with gas-powered mowers. So I'm not sure you get everything you want out of it compared to turf. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bennett? Leslie Hilton.
Hi, Leslie Nichols, 1645 Main Street, Concord. First, I assume you all are aware of this, that the Friends of CCH Men's Soccer put out a message to all parents in the program indicating that this was going to be a topic this evening and inviting people to come and make comments, and that there was going to be a comment period. So we should make sure we're working together. I'm a parent of now my third kid going through the Concord soccer programs. And I think we have the opportunity in Concord to show our children that their right to play is not in contradiction to the responsibility that each of us has to our environment. The science is not settled at all. And I think I just want to make sure that comes up. In your conversations with the town, turf has not been proven to be a safe, the science is not settled that this is at all a safe product for our children to be exposed to. And, we're really blessed to live in a community where we don't have to pit environmental responsibility against equity impact, against one another. I think we all want all of these things for our community, and we are blessed to live in a place where we can actually do that. My question is, what can we as citizens do? I'm a Concord soccer parent, but I want to make sure that we can support Concord Can in your conversations about ensuring that there is a study that's done before the turf is tossed and replaced. So what's the right mechanism for us to use as citizens of the town for our voice to be heard? If this isn't the right one, Brad, which it very well may not be, what is the right place?
This is not the one. I believe it's gonna be the select board deciding or the.
Well, I would actually encourage you to write a letter to the town manager, and we're already getting a lot of letters from the select board. It's just a comment, and I need the town manager to confirm this. I know that you're meeting with her on November 30th. My understanding
On
is.
October the 31st.
Okay, sorry, October, and my month's already. I believe that the select board is gonna, the town manager is gonna make a presentation on this topic in December 16th, that's the plan. Now, don't hold me to that, okay, because I think some of this depends on what's gonna happen the next month, but there will be a discussion, because the town manager, we voted recently to allocate $100,000 to do this assessment of options at the field. The town is responsible for the maintenance. I don't believe our public-private partnership with the schools says that we're responsible for the replacement. So I think that's a question, and maybe you know more about the document. I don't want to get into it here, we can catch up later, but I do understand it's a hot topic. The select board knows that we're going to talk about it. It came up during our ARPA funding. So the town is trying to figure out how to go about doing this assessment, who should be engaged, what's the process, how will the schools be involved, et cetera. So that process is what's going to be discussed on December 16th.
So can you just clarify sorry, I just couldn't hear. Can you just clarify so it's clear in the minutes what the action is that citizens can take? So is it a letter to the town manager?
Everyone's already sending letters to the select board and include the town manager.
Okay. Thank you,
Fine.
appreciate it.
We've already got all your arguments, I've heard them already, but I don't know if there's a comment.
I just want to clear the misconception, the town is not responsible for, they are responsible for maintenance, but the maintenance is funded by Friends of CC Fields. We,
$50,000 a year.
$50,000
right.
a year,
But
correct.
it may be more than that, I'm not sure, but yeah, the
I
town performs the maintenance is what I was trying to say.
Okay,
don't want to get in the weeds of the discussion at all today because, you know, we're going to have a meeting to discuss the process of all this.
right.
But there's one thing that I did want to point out. Somebody, I'm forgetting a name, I'm sorry, discussed about not putting any more impermeable surface down. Artificial turf is in fact classified as impermeable surface.
Why is that?
Well, because the water just runs through it, just and you know, it doesn't absorb any water, so there's runoff from it.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I
There's
don't
a
know.
Drainage system built in or something.
It is, and I think it's the EPA who made that classification that it is officially regarded as impermeable.
Okay,
I think that speaker was just saying that under the idea of replacing this, they're not looking to add more.
Well, she did say that, that's true, but I just wanted to point out
Yeah.
that it's already impermeable.
okay. Did you have a further comment? Okay,
So there's one more hand up. I don't know if
one
you
more
wanna take
hand
any
up,
more
who's
comments.
the, I don't see,
Linda.
oh, Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hello. I am also a proud soccer mom and I see that the CCH Doug Whitefield gets a lot of usage. But this is a climate focused and environmental focused group. And I think that, you know, it's great that there will be a study to understand that. And I really echo Leslie Nichols' point of view that, you know, we live in a town where we're fortunate enough where our right to play doesn't contradict our values. One of the things that was brought up was the health impacts of children, but I think it would be helpful to know the health impacts of like our water supply, because the children are on the fields, granted for a small period of time in their lifespan, playing at the field and also the time during the day that they're on it. But what is the longer term impacts of the surrounding environment? I would really like to know that and hope that the study focuses on some of that information. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out that, you know, this is a
Okay.
climate focused committee, an environment focused committee, and that's what we should be looking at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Not sure.
What?
I don't know if you wanna-
One more hand up. Let's make this the last one. Todd Benjamin,
Yes, hello, can you see me?
are you on,
Oh, sorry, here we go, sorry about that. All right, hi, thank you, Todd Benjamin, Sudbury Road, Concord.
can't hear
as-
you, Todd. Let's see, maybe it's just the mic is a little
Could you
bit,
just get a little closer maybe to a microphone or
Is that better?
yeah.
a little bit? Yeah.
Okay, Todd Benjamin, Sudbury Road. As some other people mentioned, I received an email from one of the youth organizations that this conversation was happening tonight. So wanted to log in. As other people have mentioned, you know, my kids have played football, soccer, baseball, lacrosse, you name it, you know, all three kids are playing it. We've had plenty of exposure to the Doug Whitefield. And a prior commenter mentioned the stormwater management up there. And one thing I was amazed at, this is probably going back 5-6 years, maybe even 7 years ago when my kids started, is there are literally piles of rubber pellets that have been blown off the field over next to the stormwater management grate. And that's one thing I've always wondered, is it's not just that these pellets are on the field, they're blown into the soil, they're blown into the hillsides. And if you go over there, I'm sure they're still there. You can see these piles of pellets in the corners of the field. And my thought is, where is this stuff ending up? This has got to be going down the water drain here. So that's a concern that I have. You know, there's issues about obviously safety and things of that nature. One thing that in terms of safety being in terms of player safety, the turf fields are not as forgiving as grass fields for injuries. There's more concussions, there's more sprains, etc. One thing that has to do with climate though, is some people may not realize that turf fields are often 15 to 20 degrees hotter than grass fields. And so there's a huge issue there in terms of player safety. Also, turf fields also do require from time to time to be watered to cool them off. So those are a couple of climate related things that I think we need to keep abreast of. But my big kind of observation and question has always been these rubber pellets are just, as I mentioned, blown into the soil, blown into down the stormwater drains, what have you. So I would urge the committee to move forward with utilizing natural grass fields. You know, I understand people say that there's a lot of usage on the fields. Pardon me, I don't really believe, to be quite frank, that they're in a continuous use 7 days a week, 7 hours a day, from 2 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. I think that's debatable, but we don't need to split hairs about that. But I think that we need to really look at what's the best use for our kids, for our environment, and having these rubber pellets, you know, on the kids' gear. They bring it home, it gets in the house, it gets, you know, animals ingest it, and who knows where these pellets are ending up when they get into our soil and into our water. So thanks for the time.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just counteract just on that quickly, please?
Sure.
My
Okay.
name's Mark Thomas. I'm the director of coaching
Okay.
for Concord Carlisle Youth Soccer. And I live in Wright Farm in Concord and I own a business in Concord Centre, so I'm quite invested in the town.
Yeah.
Two things. First thing, there's a heat index that we have.
There's a what?
There's a heat index.
Yeah.
So if there was a certain temperature, we don't let the kids onto the turf. And to be honest with you, in the main hot months of July and August, the turfs are very rarely used.
Yeah.
The main time that we use the turf is at the end of August all the way through to Christmas. And then from the end of March through to June.
Right.
So, and just to counteract again, I virtually live up at the turf. So the high school uses the turf from probably 2 o'clock until 6, maybe 7 some nights. The lacrosse, soccer, field hockey and flag football use it on a Saturday and a Sunday from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. We use it on Monday to Friday from 6 till 9:30. So there is literally a minimum of 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I play professional soccer, so you cannot play that amount of sport on a grass field. And I'll tell you how I know that for a fact. Every single Premier League stadium has interwoven artificial turf with their grass. So they don't all have natural grass. They all have slightly interwoven turf fields now because the turf doesn't stand up to the rigors of a game anymore. So you couldn't literally, if you think about how cold it gets overnight here, games would be called off in the morning because the fields would be too hard, whereas the turf is fine. So the turf, if we lose the turf, we literally would lose, I would say, 80 to 90% of our youth programs in the town.
80 to 90%, that
Yes.
would be surprising, but okay. Good. I would like to get if we can get a, kind of a transcript. Do you have the AI turned on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can get a transcript of all the comments, just to have them with us, but, we just want to make sure that the process is set up for a balanced, comparison with all the inputs. Let's get on. We have a lot more to cover. And I want to thank everybody for coming. No, you're from Cub Scouts.
Yes, you do. How are you?
Remind me your name.
Keith Jones. Keith Jones.
Keith, how you been?
I'm well. How are you? It's nice to see you, Brad.
So thank you very much for coming. What do we got now? We have,
You have the director's update. Director's update is next.
yeah,
Yeah, so I sent around some updates. I won't spend much time on this because I know we have a lot to cover tonight still. Just quickly mention the investment grade energy audits for our municipal buildings. We had a productive meeting back on October 2nd, an internal meeting with a number of stakeholders around that. So we had the town manager and deputy town manager, finance, procurement, CMLP, and then school leadership. We had the superintendent and finance director from schools who were there. And the facilities director and I shared our approach with linking the audits to pursuing a energy savings performance contract through an energy services company as a path forward.
That's a
And-
new acronym, by the way, ESPC.
Yeah, and this was, it was all very well received by everyone there, and everybody thought we should move forward with it. So the facilities director and I, Russ and I, are working with procurement to see what we can do to put an RFP or RFQ together as quickly as possible to keep that ball rolling. So we're just continuing to do some legwork on that. And you know, we're very encouraged and appreciative that it sounds like the schools are interested in pursuing this too. So I think we might be able to do this for all municipal buildings, including the school buildings.
Okay, very good.
So that's right now, it's all looks very promising. I mean, I think ultimately, if we do go down that road, we would need to see what the proposed contract is and make sure that the terms of that
Yeah.
contract, you know, make sense on a number of different fronts if we were to go forward with it. But at the moment, we have some good momentum behind that and are moving forward on it. I just want to mention the sustainability roundtable. I had originally intended to do the next roundtable in January. Been asked by the select board to try to move that up to December. With including an update on what I just mentioned, the whole audits and ESCO process. So that people can hear that sooner rather than later, and that the select board would be able to, you know, consider that and you know, what some of the potential options and ramifications are with that. So right now I'm working on giving a date in December. Obviously it would be probably on the earlier side.
Okay.
As farther away from the holidays as possible, but I'll keep you posted on that.
So you're gonna have an RFP before that time, you think?
Probably, I don't know if we'll have one out before that time.
But to
we'll
review.
certainly, yeah, we're certainly working on trying to make some progress on it.
Okay.
Try to be as far along as we can.
The roundtable just discuss that one issue, or would it be open to other things?
No, I don't think we necessarily need to take the whole time to discuss that. I would imagine that there would just be sort of a brief presentation about what the intended path forward is, and then be able to take some questions about that, and there could be some discussion. What I'm also hoping is that as I indicated in my notes, that you know, might consider inviting CMLP to you know, share their progress as it relates to the climate action plan. So I'll sort of see if we can balance those out. And the last thing I'll mention is climate action plan and updating that. I did have a conversation with Kim Lundgren Associates, who is the group who helped originally put the climate action plan
Right.
together for the town, and just had a sort of a very broad conversation with them, just kind of letting them know that we were heading towards that process. And you know, I was just trying to get a gauge from them and others about what the potential costs might be associated with that, so I could try to budget accordingly. So just
Okay,
kind of started that conversation, and our capital budget requests are due at the end of this week, and my intention is to put in a request for funds to support efforts to update our climate action plan with a consultant on some level.
Okay, so you want to use a consultant for that?
Yeah, and I think it remains to be seen, you know, kind of what level of involvement we would want a consultant to have, depending on what it is we think we want to do around updating the plan. But I think would definitely require a consultant on some level.
Okay.
So
What's the next step in that process after you put in your requests? What happens next and by when?
I'm not sure when the capital requests get reviewed and we get feedback. I'm not exactly sure the timeline of that. But you know, the goal is to see whether it gets approved, the request gets approved or not.
Right.
You know, no guarantee that it does. Budgets are very tight. I'm certainly be poking around to see what other sources of funding might be available through grants and other things to help us with that. I need to reach out to MAPC and some other folks to see if I can get some recommendations about potential sources of funding to help with updating the plan. So I'll see if we can find some external support as well.
Okay, yeah, and I know we want to get funding to do the network geothermal study. I don't know if that how that interacts with this, because it's I wasn't aware of the deadline next week, but maybe we need to talk about whether we can put both of them in there or what how they interact.
Okay, yeah, let's Okay, yeah, yeah, I'll check and see whether that's something that would also fall under capital planning or operations, but yeah, that's what we can do. We can talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, and I know we're gonna move on, so I'll just leave it at that and encourage anybody to follow up with me if you have any questions about anything you see in the update.
Okay. Okay. Very good, and so. You do have a section on grant, is there anything of these grant opportunities that are coming up and we need to be moving on?
Yes, so the MVP action grants in the spring, there's expressions of interest are also due this Friday. And I've been having a bunch of conversations over the last few weeks with Paul, who's on the committee here, Paul Kirshen, and John Baldock, who is formerly on the committee. Had a conversation with MAPC, a conversation with ORS, some internal conversations with other departments, basically all trying to kind of narrow down a focus, which has been kind of challenging. There's no shortage of ideas for what one of these proposals could look like. I think there's agreement that we should be trying to pursue something regional, watershed-based regional, because I think that would make us more competitive. So I think that's kind of agreed on. But we're working on trying to have something to go on Friday. Again, this is just an expression of interest, so it's really just to get some high-level feedback from the program about whether they think this idea is good. We could completely change that idea when we submit a proposal in the spring. But we're trying to refine it to hopefully get some constructive feedback.
Do you have something drafted now?
Yeah, there's been something drafted, although some of the discussions have drifted away from that a little bit, so I'm trying to put the pieces back together on that. What's drafted was sort of focused around the concept of water security and how could we do hydrologic modeling that would help inform water security for Concord and other towns. And of course, that's a very broad term and intentionally so it could hit on a lot of areas. So we may still go with that, but there's also been discussions about, should this be a larger watershed effort, like across the Suasco watershed, so Sudbury, Assabet, Concord, or there's also been suggestions of, well, maybe you could just focus on the Assabet and water quality on the Assabet versus there's also considerations of groundwater supply. It's like the water.
How long is the expression of interest?
A few pages, it's short.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'd be interested to look at it.
Yeah. So again, this is pretty high level, so this isn't any really detailed proposal, but yeah, so we're working on trying to get that on for Friday, and then.
So is Paul working with you on that?
Yeah, he and I have been working back and forth. We were talked last week and need to catch up with him again about that. So it's been kind of challenging. Paul, to his credit, has been trying to jump on calls with me here and there with some of these other stakeholder groups.
Okay, good.
But with ORS and MAPC and others. The other thing that's coming up is November 29th is proposals are due to DOER for technical assistance for decarbonization roadmap. So intending to get something in for that, where we would get technical support for the decarbonization roadmap we need to do for the town.
Oh, okay, good.
And that's November 29th. So those are kind of the two most immediate ones that are coming up. And then just mentioning that with some help from some of the other town departments, I've been told that the pre-registration forms have been sent into the IRS for us to be able to take advantage, hopefully, of direct pay opportunities. We don't have too many big projects for this first round. There's just some EVs we've purchased that we're hoping we'll be able to get some funds back on, maybe $15,000. And then we're also looking into whether we might be able to also submit for a few other EVs from the previous fiscal year. I don't know if those will qualify or not, but we'll see what we can do about that. So we're just trying to leverage those resources as best we can.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so now,
Can I have a quick question about that? I mean, some of these resources, are they restricted to EJ communities? I mean, the EVs, I guess, are not, but I'm just wondering if you're finding that we don't qualify.
No, for the IRS direct pay, that doesn't matter. Like that's not a consideration. That's basically just tax incentives that the town is now eligible for as a tax exempt organization. So we're just, you know, there's smaller things like EV chargers and EVs that we can do, and then the light plant is also looking at leveraging that for, you know, like the large scale battery storage, where if all went well with that, and you know, if the battery cost us $5 million or, you know, something like that, we could get $1 million back, you know, so there's some big money opportunities down the road for that particular opportunity. Some of these other grants, yeah, environmental justice becomes more of a consideration. The MVP grant, that's certainly a factor. So I think for us to consider a regional approach, where we might be able to partner with other towns who do have EJ populations, might increase our chances of doing that if we can find partners for that. So yeah, in some cases it's an element.
That's good. And that's not tied to the IRA, the IRS direct
No.
pay. Okay. All right.
No, that's entirely different. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Eric, I have a quick question. So you mentioned about this decarbonization roadmap for the town. How does that relate to, or does it overlap with at all, the plan for the municipal building audits?
It is definitely connected. The decarbonization roadmap is a requirement from the Green Communities program for us to apply to be one of the new climate leader communities. So there's several criteria that a town has to meet in order to be designated a climate leaders community, which is a new thing within Green Communities. And I think we probably have all the other boxes checked, except for a decarbonization roadmap, and they have a kind of a detailed plan of what needs to be included in that, which includes, you know, looking at your individual municipal buildings and coming up with a multi-year plan for, you know, tackling those buildings. You know, and it's at a somewhat higher level, not super detailed for the needs of the roadmap, but obviously the municipal buildings will factor into that. And I think the audits will certainly help to support that as well. So they are connected.
When is that roadmap needed, or, you know, by when is it necessary to have that in place for the Green Communities grants?
Yeah, so if we were successful with getting some technical assistance this fall, then it would take a few months, I think, to set that up and get that in process and get the roadmap done, which I think could be done by late spring. And then I think there's two deadlines next year where communities can apply for that status. So it'll be at some point next year that hopefully with that roadmap will be done. So it may not be ideal in terms of lining it up with the building audits, in terms of the audits informing the roadmap at the time the roadmap's done, but you know, I think there'll be opportunities to sort of, you know, go back and forth with that, you know, and still take advantage of whatever the audits provide us to update that roadmap and inform that roadmap.
And one last question is, I mean, you and I have talked about this a little bit already, but how do you see, or what do you see as the role of this committee in developing that roadmap?
Well, what I'd like to do is I can send around again, the right word, not instructions, but the outline of what's expected to be included in that decarbonization roadmap. And, you know, I would certainly welcome any help and input from the community in, you know, helping to pull together the data, you know, because we're gonna have to go into our Green Communities MEI data, look at a lot of building data, things like that. And if we get some technical assistance, then we'll have some outside support to help do that. But if anybody in the committee is interested in helping to do that too, then I'm sure we'd certainly welcome that help. So I think there's opportunities there if people are interested in helping with that.
Well, as you know from our prior conversations, this is a particular topic of interest to me. It just hasn't been clear to me procedurally. How do we do this? Who does what and by when and that sort of thing? Maybe,
yeah,
maybe you can, for the next CAC meeting, bring us more details on those topics, or let us know beforehand so we can position ourselves or make plans to support that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll work on a timeline for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we're at 8 o'clock, about, half hour back. Gonna have an update on the network geothermal stuff. There's not that much to report. We had a subcommittee meeting. When did we have it? We had it, a couple of weeks ago, on the 15th. I had written a short document that I'm, for just sort of at a high level to describe what we're, why this could be a good thing. And, I haven't polished it off and sent it out yet. But it's intended for, select board, town manager. I hope to get this done in the next day or so. We're still, we're wanting to get some funding to get a consultant to help us, with our planning effort. And that's where we're a little bit of stuck. We gotta look at what other grant possibilities there are and see whether maybe we should get it into the town capital planning process just to see as a proposal. So I'm gonna get in touch with you, Eric, about that. Then there was this really interesting meeting the other night. That was arranged by a guy from Marblehead. It was a Massachusetts Light Commissioners Association fall webinar on electric utilities and geothermal projects. And there were a number of communities interested, including Marblehead and Wellesley and Belmont and Concord, and some others. And the head of the DPU, Department of Public Utilities, spoke and is really very supportive of this. There was some discussion about the cost of the Framingham pilot, which cost something like $17 million to install for 135 customers, so somewhat over $100,000 a home, which is kind of on the high side, but I think everybody felt this being a first of a kind pilot project, it's quite a bit more expensive than ultimately they need to be. The cost for putting the equipment in the homes was about $44,000 per residence, which was interesting. Anyway, I think the costs ought to come down, but
Wait,
there's
so-
still a question whether they can come down well enough
Right.
to.
Just for clarification, is the 44,000 of cost of installation in the home included in that estimate of about over 100,000 per home, or is that an addition to the 100,000?
No, it's included in that.
Included, okay.
So it's not like totally out of sight. If it cost 10 times as much as that, you would think, well, but it's kind of in the ballpark. It's on the high side. Then there was a talk by a guy from Oklahoma named Boyd Lee, which was really quite something, I thought. He works for a company, something called CK Energy Electric Cooperative. And you can think of CMLP as an electric cooperative, we own our own light plant. And they have really been pushing geothermal, and about every new home that gets built within this territory is built with geothermal. And the reason they're able to do it is they have a model by which the utility saves so much money from capacity charges, basically, that they're able to put quite like a $3,600 rebate per ton, which is much higher than anything that we do. I want to understand that better, because and things are different there, of course. They're not dense. These are mostly for single homes. But he felt that, a network, geothermal would be even better, you know, because you get some economy of scale. So I'm trying to understand. It was very, I'll pass. When I get the recording, I will send it around. He was kind of inspiring to listen to. Is there anything else that from our meeting the other night, Catherine, that you remember that's worth passing on, Jerry?
No, it seems to me that the real blocker for moving forward with planning is the money issue. So I guess, and also the town being supportive of it. So I guess the question I have is, and maybe they're one and the same, but, so, you know, I know you're going to discuss with Eric about putting it in a budget proposal, but is there anything else we should think about or do beyond that?
Now Gavin's here, which he works on this in other states.
I'll do, you have a question first?
Yeah, I do. I mean, just because I was listening to somebody talking about how, using, so I assume what happened in Framingham is the same sort of geothermal that you do on an average home, if a home is using it, right? They're drilling that deep.
Yeah.
It's not the deep drilling, because there's this new push to get oil companies that have all this drilling equipment and everything to be changing over to geothermal. And I know that there are oil companies that are, but that would be drilling to a different depth. And so I would just want to, I'm assuming that the thought is now more like what has been happening currently, which is not very deep drilling, correct?
Well, all of this is not very deep in the sense, when someone talks about geothermal energy, they're talking about drilling way down into the hot stuff. We're still talking about a few 100 feet.
So this woman was just talking about if they could actually get oil companies which have significant drilling, expertise and
Right.
having them really focus on that this could really move fairly quickly, you know, getting people on board.
I did read about that.
Yeah,
Right, I mean,
I'm just trying to understand where we are
drillings are-
talking about. That's all.
it's not so much like an oil company drilling, this is somebody's truck drives down the street and drills a well. and-
Right, so we're not doing, nobody's considered yet the sort of deeper.
Yeah, it's a comfortable depth to a water well, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe
And just-
not even as a water well.
Just a side note on that, because it's gotten kind of newsy lately. And this is not necessarily geothermal, but just this whole idea of net zero oil, which is now being marketed, and Occidental is partnering with Climate Works, which is a respected climate organization that maybe sold their soul to sort of partnering the oil companies to do some work, and now they're marketing as net zero oil, which I think is ultimate greenwashing. So anyway, I don't want to get on a tangent of that, but I also want to sort of put it out there since you raised the oil issue. Because there is a lot of great work going on, but there's also some, you know, and we do need these companies to transition off of oil and gas, and they do have the infrastructure and the manpower to do that. So we should support that transition. But there is also some sort of ugliness that's happening out there as well that's being marketed. So I do think it's good to be clear about what we're talking about.
Right, I hadn't heard of net zero oil, it's
Yeah, nor have I.
it's a
Right, that
concept.
sounds
Yeah.
impossible.
Brad, I'll just say,
Yeah.
that I think
Yes.
the model for new construction is definitely the best financial play at this point.
Yeah.
Because retrofitting where buildings have natural gas, let's say, like the utilities did, it can be not as much of a cost difference for folks in terms of the cost savings. So if you're replacing an oil system, then it can be a real difference maker. If you put in network geothermal, that can save a lot. With subsidies and everything for gas nowadays, you know, it doesn't save as much. So I think looking for buildings in town that are on oil and also with densely populated areas, looking for places where there's new construction, that's probably the best model. And I'm surprised by the 17 million you said. Our pilot projects that we're proposing in New York State are 40 to 50 million. So it's definitely expensive doing these pilot projects. Yeah, but so I think for
40 to 50 million for
a project,
How big a project is that?
roughly 50 homes and businesses. So,
So like $1 million a home.
yeah, it's pretty expensive.
Wow.
That's interesting.
But if we were redeveloping a large tract of land, say in West Concord.
Yeah.
Then there
Where
would
a former
be
prison used to be, maybe. Potentially, yeah, that would be a good case where this new building, build in the geothermal, because the retrofitting is where the most cost comes in. Having to insulate people's homes, install a heat pump, get into their basement, all
Right.
that is what makes it very expensive versus if it's new construction, it's a better cost proposition.
Right. But the $44,000 per home is not that far off for retrofitting. It's that,
I would say it may even be more expensive.
it can be, but
Yeah.
it depends on what's installed. So 40 to 50 million, that's surprising.
Yeah, well, one of the projects that we're potentially proposing is in Ithaca, which we do open geothermal, meaning like we're using the
Yeah.
watershed as well, so a little more complicated
Yeah,
than maybe what we would do here. But yeah, happy to give some more advice later on or
Yeah, and-
tips that I can.
sure. Okay, we're at 8:15. Catching up a little bit, maybe not. So we're gonna review a section of the climate action plan. And, you know, with what Eric said about bringing the consultant, we have to figure out where we fit in, but I still want us to, try to, even with a consultant, to, contribute, where we can with our creativity, et cetera. I read through the section 3, the mobility, or transportation. And I realized that when we talked about the other sections before, we didn't actually dig down into the blueprints. We just talked about the high level stuff.
Just got connected to the internet, sorry.
I
I just went to go and look at those.
Yeah, this is,
Right.
this is
I-
mobility, right?
Yeah, I can see what's.
So, in order to be productive, I think what we need to do, just thinking forward, next few months is divvy up,
Page 24.
sections. Like this section on, mobility, you know, there's 5 priority actions, but each one of them is broken down into, quite a number of things. Some of which haven't happened at all, and some of which have happened.
Yeah, the Transportation Action Committee, what's it called, TAC?
Yeah,
They, you know, they talk about getting some sort of public transport in, they, what's it called, something Connect,
Crosstown Connect.
Crosstown Connect, which is operating in Acton. To see if, I mean, they've been talking for years about getting that into Concord,
Yeah.
but it hasn't happened yet. But certainly, you know, they're talking about something, and one thing that Laura Davis, said, you really need, you know, for something to be successful and useful.
Right.
You need buses every 15 minutes, which
Right.
is,
So this is on the first action, which is, increased use of public transportation and other low carbon and no carbon transportation options. And it could be that bicycling and walking has increased a little bit, I don't know, it would be hard to know.
I don't know whether it has or hasn't, but I know, you know, again, TAC is
Yeah,
encouraging it.
right. Do you know if they did, I mean, they did some community outreach to figure out what some barriers were to, public transportation, but,
To public transportation or to.
or to,
or to,
shared transit,
share,
stuff like
you
that.
know, bicycling. I mean. Public transportation is lack of it. I mean, it's really
Right.
only, well, there's 2 things that take you into Boston. There's the train and the Yankee bus.
Right,
And that's pretty limited.
Right. You know, there were five, 6 actions, one which is besides, you know, doing some stakeholder research. There was going to be piloting a local bus to connect town centers with train stations back in 2020 and 2021, and maybe COVID shut that down.
Yeah, I think COVID
Um,
did shut a lot down, but I mean, it, in this regard.
I guess in each one of these, there's collaborating with neighboring communities. There's a communications plan. All these things were already supposed to have happened. And I don't know to what extent they have happened, and that's why we need to, we need to take the time to dig down further into each of these, figure out who was supposed to do it and what was done. I think we have to assess what was done.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the adoption of electric vehicles, that's certainly going well. But the other things, and the
Right,
electrification of municipal vehicles, that's going pretty well.
right.
The others,
Yeah. Well, it is, yeah. So I looked at some of the data on, so accelerating adoption of electric vehicles. If you look at the data from the last year, where they increased by 33% in 1 year, if you keep on increasing at that rate, we'll make the target,
mhm.
turns out. I get the
Is it a
question is,
linear rate or an exponential rate?
what?
Linear or exponential?
That's an
rate?
exponential rate.
Mhm.
You know, you don't have to assume. Right? But at some point you run into, you know, there's no chargers in a lot of the multifamily homes. There's things that are going to, put the brakes on this.
Yeah, I mean, there are.
It's not gonna actually go that fast unless, some difficult things are done.
But there still needs to be outreach. I mean, I was just happened to talk to a friend walking a dog and she was like, didn't know, but she did make it to the electric car demonstration. And then she didn't know that CMLP had people she could talk to, which is amazing because it shows up in my email, but I don't know. So I think there's still some public education to go,
Right.
come about to give people information because they're not sure what, they
Right.
don't know which part to go with and they want to rely on somebody with some expertise who's not invested in it.
I mean, there's always a need for that.
Yeah.
I would say that's the strongest component of what's been done so far is the education.
Well, but I think we need more. I mean, she didn't.
Yeah.
She was
Well, I mean,
clueless, and
people-
actually the other person walking is looking for a hybrid because she drives back and forth to New York. To,
Yeah.
to the point that there's not charging, but again, had no clue.
Right.
Had
Yeah.
heard about that event, but not, didn't attend and didn't know that there was also resources.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Was the
Yeah.
comprehensive transportation study, is that still in progress or was it released?
No, it's still in progress.
Still in
And
progress?
if they expanded it or they've done it, but it's not done yet.
Okay.
Okay, so that's still going on.
Is there a timeline for that? I was wondering, because I know I know that I thought added something or filled out a survey over a year ago, I think. I don't remember when.
It's not my committee, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's nobody connected to the TAC here. And no, yeah, Laura used to be very involved, but she had to step away, so I guess we can.
Yeah.
Can find out other ways. I guess I also have a question. I mean, at what point are we open to new ideas and proposals? Is that for in sort of thinking about the new updated plan, or is that like tonight reviewing the transportation, or where's the forum for sort of thinking about new, or is that taking it to the tax, since that's not really technically our purview?
I think we gotta collect them, and in this case, take them to the tax, but if it's, I don't have a real process. I think we have to start collecting ideas, but we have to look in at what's been done. And some of those things that haven't been done are not worth doing. And some of them are worth doing and, need somebody to champion them. I was just got sidetracked looking at data today. So on vehicle transportation, we do have more and more EVs, which is nice, but there was also a goal of reducing miles traveled.
Mhm.
And that goes along with other modes of transportation.
Sure.
And if you actually look at the data, so the Department of DOT site that has that shows vehicle miles traveled, and it's increasing every year.
It's interesting too,
I
this,
can
the
agree to
state,
that every time I commute into work.
Yeah.
I said, yes, I see it every day when I'm going to work.
Right.
it's interesting, the state doesn't have a
And
goal
you're-
to
you're-
reduce
you're
VMT
right?
either. So we're actually we're more progressive than the state, because the state doesn't have a published goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled per the DOT,
Right.
supposedly. Maybe they updated that over the past few months, but I'm not sure. They
Yeah,
had
but-
that in their big plan and they didn't include that.
Yeah, I looked at it, it went down, in 2020 because of the pandemic, and then it's just been rising linearly. So it's gonna, the goal in the climate action plan is to lower it by like 20 or 30%. By 2030, but we're gonna not come anywhere near that.
That's all that happened during the pandemic. We're not gonna come close to dropping it by 20 to 30%.
Right.
I'd be interested to see if we could get a measurement for electric bikes in town. That's been a pretty good game changer for mobility, especially for families where they can get the kind of wheelbarrow cross bike where they can put the kids in the front and bike around. I know Laura Davis had one of those as
Yeah,
well.
there are a couple of people of
Yeah.
mothers out front who have cargo bikes that they carry their children in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go to Somerville, Cambridge, where there are bike lanes, there's a lot of families that commute or go places with those e-bikes. So I think that would be great for the town, but if you build it, they will come. People have to feel safe
Yeah,
on the
I mean,
roads.
there's just no bicycle infrastructure in the town, really.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very difficult to put good infrastructure in because, I mean, there's only limited roads. You know, Route 62 isn't very wide.
Yeah.
But it's the only way really getting from west to,
Right.
to the center of Concord. Or towards Bedford. I mean, Laurel Road's pretty wide. You could put a bike path along there pretty easily. But, and maybe Lexington Road, but, there's only certain routes that are suitable for bicycle infrastructure, in my humble opinion. And
Right.
there's no, a lot of other towns, you can get away from the main roads, but because we have the train tracks and we have 3 rivers and we have Route 2, it's just not possible.
Especially if there are parked cars on both sides of the.
Well, yes,
road.
I mean,
So it
I've
just
often
sacrifices
thought
something.
that why are we using roads for storage of people's personal property? But
Yeah, can I put a couch out there? In town.
I don't know, I think it's gonna continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think
Right.
that's why a comprehensive approach is so necessary, because some of these things are just sitting there silos. So for example, it seems crazy to me that our planning zoning for new construction requires parking. Even for, a single family or 1-bedroom apartment, you need to have 1.75 parking spaces. I mean, so some of these things just need to shift. We need to change the norms. But that's sort of planning, right? And then for transportation, I mean, I agree, Janet, that it's hard on some of these roads, but I think also it's a mind shift, right? If we sort of say, oh, they're too narrow or they're this, it's never going to happen. So I worry that we're never going to kind of move forward to changing and shifting the culture to making pedestrian and bike safe streets in Concord if we just focus on EVs and focus on car use and miles traveled. And instead, I think if we can shift our glaze to thinking about, pedestrian and bike safety and mobility around town, that will actually get cars off the road and make people feel safe to get out of their cars. So anyway, sorry, that's my little soapbox, but I as a committee, I don't know where we sit on this or how we can kind of think of it as a comprehensive approach when a lot of these things and decisions are made in different committees. and parts of town.
Right, no,
I mean, how much is in the purview of the transportation committee? Rather than us,
This is-
I mean, they're doing this infrastructure and the planning, how to use the roads better. We're just focused on getting greenhouse gas down.
right, it's an advisory committee as we are,
Yes,
and, so they're not gonna. Uh, have you been sitting in on those meetings?
I have sat in quite a few, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
right, so, they didn't exist when the climate action plan was created, and in
True.
fact, the climate action plan called for a planning function within the town government. I don't know, is there a transportation?
there was a transportation planner who left.
Okay,
And now we're gonna replace that role actually with a director. So it won't be completely focused on that. So
okay,
we did have a start.
you had a
But I
start,
think our priorities for the town with MCI and everything else just need a different skill set. Right.
It was also a challenge to recruit somebody for that
Yeah,
role,
exactly.
unfortunately.
We could always do a warrant article with goals
yeah,
to make it more enforceable than just a plan.
right, okay. So there is a municipal fleet policy, and that's where you said that we're doing pretty well. But that doesn't include school buses, right? That policy is.
No.
Does it apply to the school other than the school buses?
Yeah, I believe so, and the other municipal vehicles, so.
Okay.
well, certainly in the prioritized action here to electrify school and municipal vehicle fleets.
Yeah,
What happened with that dump truck?
what implement?
Not sure.
These cars didn't, so.
Yeah, there's police cars and there's, yeah.
Do we know how many
Uh.
staff use public transportation to get to work? Concord staff members? Or does every staff member, or not every, but 90-some% or more drive individual cars to work every day? Do we have any data?
I'd say yes.
I don't know a specific answer to that. Anecdotally, I would think yes, the majority, probably overwhelming majority drive.
Do you
Yeah.
have a sense if there was a subsidy, like either free or highly subsidized MBTA passes, if that behavior might change?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you'd have to know where people are coming from and whether they would have that access. Like if they're coming from, east of here, then yeah, maybe would consider taking the train if they hadn't before. I don't know. But if a lot of people are coming from north or west, then there's probably not a whole lot of, public transit options for them to get here easily.
I did learn that there is a bus from Framingham that brings people to Emerson Hospital, their staff.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many runs it does in a day. But I did learn there is a bus from Framingham to Emerson Hospital.
Is that owned by the hospital?
I know it's owned by the hospital, but it's all, the route is organized
Okay.
by the hospital.
Maybe folks could take the rail trail coming from Framingham in the future.
Well, that's true.
That should also probably be trains, but the
Right.
rail trail's halfway there.
Well, I'm amazed how few people ride to the Concord train station on their bikes. I mean, the number of bikes that make use of the transit, the South Action train station. I mean, there's always hundreds of, well, I don't know, at least 50 bikes there.
Yeah,
And if you go to West Concord, you maybe 5 if you're lucky.
right.
And I don't know why.
Well, there was some talk about, from somebody who had an expensive bike, that there's some stations have better locking systems, like lockers for bikes.
Acton does have some lockers for bikes, but they also have bike racks.
I'm just saying that was raised
Yeah.
at one of our meetings that there wasn't,
Right. no,
adequate protection for bikes.
They
for
also
some
have
people.
the South Acton stop has the Assabet River Rail Trail that feeds into it,
It does.
so that might be as
It
well.
does, but I think the
But we also have the
bike
Bruce Freeman.
parking predates that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if we wanted to, if you want to get behavior change and, people thinking first about how do I get there without my car? I don't know how, that's a tough nut.
Yeah, well, one of the things that
Uh,
Mothers Out Front has been doing is organizing, little excursions from the West Concord train station, riding the rail trail out to Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
And there's a coffee place there, they have a cup of coffee, but, that you can go into Trader Joe's and buy some stuff and put your bicycle and ride back again. There's actually there's a traffic light where you can cross there, so it's cross Route 119 there. And there's a little path from the rail trail to 119, so it's very easy and
so by doing it, as a group,
they're
it's
doing
more
it,
fun.
they do it as a group and families and all that.
It
But I'm sure
normalizes
by
the
doing, it
behavior.
normalizes the behavior, exactly.
that'd be interesting. We could do that as a committee, have a little event on the rail trail, like a little bike ride.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd be interested if we could get the stats as well for how many kids bike to Concord Middle School on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. That would be an interesting
well,
indicator.
they did have the safe routes to schools trips
Mhm.
to all four schools.
Yeah.
This one,
Or making sure that the middle school, if it has a path down to the rail trail.
yeah, I mean, it goes right by the Sanborn School.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I mean, I could imagine it would even be more powerful if the Transportation Advisory Committee and the CAC teamed up and did some sort of community bike ride. I know Phil Posner, right? He's on TAC, I think.
Yes,
Mm.
yes,
He would be highly supportive of something like that.
he would.
Might have to do it in the spring.
Yeah, I think
Unless we bundle up.
it's a bit late to organize it now.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, November might be warm enough, it might not be, but.
Yeah.
Thinking about going through this plan and, picking up each piece and examining it and saying, have we done this? What happened when we tried? Who's accountable? I think, the other thing that we need to do is we're revising this plan next year is figuring out in an intentional way what our role is in accountability for these things
right,
and defining that inside the four corners of the plan. And also defining not just the key stakeholders, but also the custodians of accountability on each of our things.
right,
And then taking it upon ourselves to, not just to review this now and then, but actually to go and ask the stakeholders, did you do the thing?
yeah, you have a good point, because the way the plan is laid out, there is, for any given one of these implementation steps, like, say, evaluate opportunities to create a more bike-friendly community. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 stakeholders, or 8 key partners, but there isn't a lead partner. On most of these, on some, there's an obvious lead partner, but on most of them, there's not, I would say.
And you mentioned that the Transportation Advisory Committee wasn't in existence before, when we wrote this plan.
Yeah.
We weren't in existence when this plan was written either.
Yeah, we weren't.
And now we're going to be. And so I think we ought to be clarifying what our responsibility is for ensuring that this happens as we're doing it. And
Yeah,
pushing a point of view that we belong at these various tables as an accountability or standards officer or something.
I'm quite happy not to necessarily be at every table, but.
Maybe not every table, but clarifying our role.
Where
to-
where, yeah,
Because somebody will need to do it, or else many of the things will not get done.
right. Okay,
That's what the round table's for.
Well, yeah, I mean, in part, that was partly my intention was to have these regular check-ins with, you know, some of these key stakeholders that are identified in the plan and you know,
So I did-
find out how we're doing, you know, with, like,
Publicly
through them,
moving
yeah,
toast or
through some of the
something,
different
yeah.
departments and other stakeholder commission or boards and committees, you know, so yeah, obviously, you know, like Transportation Advisory Committee said didn't exist, so there's certainly a
Right.
group that could be added to this, but through the roundtable, yeah, that was part of my hope was to, you know, kind of regularly remind these stakeholders of the role they play in the
Yeah.
climate action plan and making progress towards that through their actions, so.
right, so I guess with any of these, I'm just trying to figure out how to get off the starting block with this.
Could I make a suggestion potentially?
Yeah.
I'm noticing and I'm new, still feeling like I'm still trying to figure out where the levers of power are and who are the deciders, but DPLM seems to be mentioned a lot as a stakeholder in the transportation, at least the first transportation one. And I unfortunately, I missed the last sustainability roundtable. You mentioned inviting CMLP. I'm wondering if they've given an update or are tuned in to the fact that their footprints or handprints are on the transportation part of this plan. And if not, I'm wondering if we can maybe have them present at the next roundtable as well, or if that's too many presentations.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think I think I'd certainly like them to be one of the stakeholders who does, you know, come and participate and talk in more detail about, you know, what they're doing. You know, whether it's the planning board or others around DPLM. You know, I can say I meet weekly with the DPLM group, as a staff meeting and, you know, they're certainly aware, like the town planner and her staff are certainly aware of their role in transportation and sustainable transportation for the town. And like was mentioned, you know, I mean, there was the town had committed to having a transportation planner on staff, which has now evolved a little bit. We did sort of briefly have one. So I think that the commitment is there and the awareness is there. I think
Yeah,
the execution has been a little choppy. I mean, not because of anybody's fault, just because of circumstances that it's been a little bit choppy, but you know, I think they are committed to doing that. I mean, you know, just going through the whole MBTA zoning effort that the town has recently with, you know, trying to think about how to do these zoning overlays to promote increased development around transportation hubs, public transportation hubs is, you know, things like that are certainly on their radar and not just because the state is asking them to do it, but because, you know, they have an interest in doing it too for the town.
yeah. Is there? Yeah. I think we should, I wonder if there's a source document which just has all the text. And it's worth us, going in and adding comments and things like that. Going into all these blueprints and saying, this is, sort of filling out what we know about the status, who in these different groups, or in these different, groups is involved or not. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I also see this as part of the process of updating the plan and maybe where, you know, that consultant role could help, which is, you know, having these, as part of that process, having these stakeholder meetings where,
right,
you know, these different stakeholders, different committees and departments and others and boards, you know, are asked to sit down as part of this process and say, you know, let's look at the plan, let's see where we've made progress, let's see how your department has helped with that, let's see where there's gaps. And, you know, how do we look forward, you know, with you as a department or a board or a committee, and what role do you play? So, and I think that's something that's probably, in my mind, at least best facilitated by a third party to really.
I think, yeah, I'm starting to realize
Finger
that.
pointing and all of that, yeah, no.
Yeah, well,
No,
Yeah.
I do, I think it's,
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Having an outside party coming in feels less.
well, you know, I mean, that was part of the process when this was developed, was bringing together stakeholders to say, hey, what should the plan look like for the town? And now we know what the plan looks like, so what should it look like now that we're revising it, you know, and getting that input from, you know, these different stakeholders, so. So I think between the roundtable and, you know, hopefully a process with, you know, with the consultant, we can streamline that.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
The individual or the organization or whatever, the company that did this before, were they consultants or did they just organize this? What was their role
what was the consultant?
that put this together?
Yeah, it was a consultant that the town hired.
And they worked together with, the sustainability director then and the climate action advisory board. Which isn't mentioned in here that much.
And I think there was some community input and, you know, there's some
Yeah.
meetings where you can, say your priorities. You're green, I'm blue.
If you're blue, you're in the wrong section.
What?
Blue is the section one up.
Action implementation blueprints, and so it's.
There's a different color for each of the
Yeah, but you're
five,
too far up if you're on the blue. You should scroll down more to get to the.
or if it's light blue, you're too far down.
There are two blues. I haven't gone past the greens yet.
It's dark blue, green,
The
light
light
blue.
blue gets to,
Yeah.
No,
the,
like-
Okay,
and then
it's light
the
blue,
pale
it's
green,
Natural
far down.
resources, yeah.
which is about.
right. Yeah, so I don't, so when you talk to Kim
Okay.
Lundgren about it, what, is she would like to, did she say what part of it they would wanna do?
No, well, I had to keep the conversation fairly high level. Because
Yeah.
if we do go out for a consultant.
It might not be
any
them.
Perception that they had a lot more information than another consultant in terms of putting a proposal together. So I
Right.
can't really talk to her about it in any great detail. You know,
Okay.
so the conversation was just high level about, hey, you know, we're approaching a point where we're. You know, looking at revising the plan and, you know, I was just saying in the context of, you know, I'm trying to get some ballpark estimates of, you know, what it might cost, just so I know how to appropriately try to budget. You know,
Okay,
for that, so yeah, it wasn't any more detailed than that at this point, just because I had to be careful about, you know,
Right.
procurement and
there,
that kind of thing, so.
okay,
You know, but I would imagine that there would be elements of. From the original process, like I said, bringing together stakeholder groups to, you know, review things and provide input on directions and. Things like that, so I think there has to be. I think
Right.
there has to be a process for stakeholder input and feedback, and then, you know, probably some level of public feedback as well, you know, opportunities for that. And then, of course, you know, there's the nitty gritty of, you know, how do we make the actual changes to the plan? And what does that look like? And
so maybe the place we need to dig in is just in analyzing how it's gone so far.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good first step, yeah.
And just having, getting as much information together on, you know, we had this plan with all these steps, which ones, are done or are started or are, yeah, okay,
Yeah, halfway benchmark,
yeah.
2025.
Does it make sense to have a separate meeting to kind of go through and, you know, come up with some sort of consistent way of rather than sort of putting in as a line item in these meetings, just so that we can have some consistency in how we analyze how we've done. I don't know if it's a red light, yellow light, green light system, or have a external facilitator come up with some sort of consistent methodology. I just worry that with these meetings, we're sort of going about it not in a very consistent way.
I agree with you, 100%. And I'm just trying to, if we,
Or can we dedicate, I don't want to add another meeting, or could we dedicate the next meeting more time to then go through these blueprints and maybe do some homework in advance so that people can bring, to the table their,
I think that's the important thing. So if we were to take this section and divide it up into the priority actions and have a couple people assigned to each and do some homework of looking through and trying to figure out what do we know about what's been done. Does that make sense? And then kind of documenting what we have.
Well, a book report on an 80-page book is gonna be more than a 2-hour meeting, though.
Well, it's not, I think we gotta do one section at a time.
One section at a time.
That's a lot of meetings if it's the dedicated meetings.
Right. I mean, we're kind of we're kind of exploring where do we fit, as well as understanding what, what's in the plan.
How long would an RFP take to, or could we just work with a consultant that we worked with previously without an RFP?
Well, as far as timing goes, I guess, let's put it this way, if I'm making a capital request, it's gonna be for FY 26, so that money at best, if I get funds, that money at best would be available July of next year.
Yeah.
2025. So there's not money to move forward with that I'm aware of at this point. So, I mean, obviously we can do work leading up to that, but there wouldn't be any action in terms of bringing somebody else in, I don't think, prior to that.
Okay.
So.
So there's a lot of time we don't have to go and dive in and spend half an hour just exploring it, with each other. If we just divide it up into, I mean, I'm more inclined to look at the buildings side of things. Maybe we should have some of us do that, some of us do transportation and just report, look, work in pairs or something like that, and start commenting and start putting together a status report over the next few meetings.
I mean, I'm looking at track annual mileage and electricity consumption, ensure vehicles are being used in the most efficient way possible, school district. So, do you think if we call the school district, we talk to anybody there, they would tell us that they're tracking annual mileage? And that they're using the vehicles most efficiently? I mean, is that realistic?
Well, in that particular case, they probably do track them. But, that would be probably in Mass Energy Insight or something like that.
If all we're doing
If it's
is,
municipal, yeah.
if all we're doing is a rough report card,
Yeah,
and you call the school and you ask that question and they say, why do you wanna know? And you don't get an answer, well, then for the purposes of this exercise, that's the report.
Well, I know, and that's what I'm just, that's sort of my point. I wonder if we would get that information, if we have to, I don't know. It seems to me there might be, maybe not, maybe it's not difficult, but I mean.
yeah. I know what you're saying, if it comes out of the blue, it's, where did that thing go?
I mean, I think what's hard is what gets measured gets done, right? So I do worry a little bit about bias towards the things that are easily measured, and not have a really comprehensive overview. But to that point, if you can't get the data, then it's really hard to report out. But I think it's important to call that out. you know, what are the things that we can actually track pretty easily and we're doing well on? What are the things, what are the challenges and barriers? Because I think that's gonna inform our next iteration.
Well, and is anybody really tracking? Is anybody really ensuring that things are used most efficiently? I mean, those are pretty vague. Talking to a school committee, are you sure everybody that's using vehicles are using them in the most efficient way, and how are you tracking that? I suspect nobody is. I'm sorry. I suspect they're not.
The number of kids who drive to school every day, increasing or decreasing.
Well, I mean, even just using
Yeah.
their, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure that's the biggest. Well, one of the biggest anyway, because there's a lot of kids in there. There's a lot of parking there.
Just a process point where the meeting has gone on for a long time. I think there are some folks that may have joined after our turf fields
Oh.
discussion that may be here before that. I'm not sure. But I'm just wondering if someone wants to know where we are on the agenda and how we addressed that earlier in the meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to make one comment on our last topic before we potentially move on, just very briefly.
Yeah. Jerry, you froze.
Frozen, bad timing.
Probably a great comment, though.
Hey, Jerry,
I do see that Bob Grom added his name, and I know he had an interest in soccer.
hey, Jerry,
Jerry, if you can hear us, you're frozen and.
Otherwise, just want to put,
Oh, Jerry, you froze. Maybe if you turn your video off, it might help.
Say the whole thing again.
yeah, we didn't hear
any of
anything you
that.
Can we text him? Can we message him?
said. Oh,
so,
there we go.
okay, so no one heard my comments, basically?
No,
That's
we did
correct.
not.
We can hear you
Okay.
now, though.
Okay, my point is simply to say that if we're embarking on a scorecard or a report card, we should have a rubric that we would all use for all topics so that we get very consistent. We have a consistent approach. You know, for example, the point about it, contacting CMLP and asking if they're using the vehicles efficiently. I'm sure we'll get a vague answer for that. Nothing to do with the schools, but just because it's a tough question to answer. We'll probably get that in other places too. We need to be prepared to ask the same kinds of questions and collect data in the same manner across the various topics. So that work would need to be done before we embark on the study for the data.
Okay.
If we go through in a systematic fashion, looking at this and grading it or reporting on it, do we have a duty to report our findings to town policymakers or to the public?
Well, I'll just comment,
Yeah,
as a
sure.
select board member, the select board had a goal that identified a desire to have this committee update the plan and put forth new recommendations. In our last meeting, we just said that's kind of lofty. And we said, made best efforts to document what's actually been done in the plan would be beneficial. But there's not an obligation for you to report back to the select board. I'm here partly because I'm keeping track of what you're doing, just to say, are we making any progress? But
Yeah.
so to that knowledge, no, I mean, but I think you've got a challenge because it's just, it's a big plan and there's a lot, but like even with the transportation committee, maybe just have a meeting with them. And do they even know what's in the climate action plan on all these transportation things? They're already
So
working
that's-
on
that's
it,
a really
right?
good
Just
point.
have them and just brainstorm together. What should we do? What are the barriers? The plan has
Yeah.
barriers in there and stuff, but I don't know if they're still barriers or there's new ones. So, but maybe on transportation, then it gets more ownership on the transportation committee, because it's not your committee that's in control of all that, but.
Yeah, well, I can certainly, sent an email to the chair of the committee saying, do you know about this?
Yeah,
And, you know, take a look at these pages and,
yeah,
and tell us what you think.
Right,
collaborate, right? Ellen came here last time looking for some collaboration. It's just the same form of collaboration.
Yeah. I like the scorecard idea.
yeah,
If we can have a little blurb maybe on section and then score 1 to 10 or A through F. Yeah, hopefully not too many Fs.
right.
That could be a good way of doing it. If we could standardize that and then send people to work on different
I
sections.
like that idea.
The dashboard does something already, but I don't know how it scores it, like. if-
Well, the dashboard gives, the dashboard
No idea.
provides a status indicator,
Yeah.
but it's really only 3 options. It's status, in progress, or complete.
Oh.
So it's not particularly technical. Or sorry, awaiting resources is one, or in progress, or complete, so.
Okay,
You know, so that's not. Yeah, waiting, yeah, so. Yeah, that's not particularly technical, so I don't, maybe a more specific. Metric or scale would be more useful,
right,
but I think we also need to think, so for example, transportation, yes, it would certainly be worth. You know, communicating with the Transportation Advisory Committee, I know there's been some exchanges, you know, I like to think they're aware of maybe.
they're aware.
Their role in the plan, and they're aware, but. But, you know, there's also other elements of that, of transportation and conversations that would need to be had with, say, the planning department. And even our economic vitality and tourism staff members, because transportation gets discussed with them a lot in terms of, you know, their roles within the town. And how that impacts, you know, businesses and visitors and things like that. So they're always thinking about that. You know, I've had conversations with the tourism manager about, you know, and she's played a role in the past in doing some of those pilot shuttle efforts and programs, you know, so
Right.
so I think it goes beyond just the Transportation Advisory Committee. I mean, obviously they're an important stakeholder in this. But if we're looking for feedback from people, say, on that particular part of the plan, then there's certainly other stakeholders who, you know, would need to be engaged in that too, so.
Right. Okay, so where are we? Jerry suggests developing a rubric, a little more refined than what's on the dashboard, but maybe not that much more complicated.
And I'll send a link to the dashboard up to everybody again, just so
Okay.
they have it and can.
Good, we should, it's 9 o'clock, so
We should talk to the people who
I
are.
think we should, is there anybody on the call in the public that wants to make a comment?
Well, somebody mentioned that you guys already talked about the turf discussion.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
There'll be a recording of this meeting and also agenda minutes. You can also give a brief summary.
Did you have like maybe a Reader's Digest version of something you wanted to say as a member of the public?
Well, okay, as a member of the public, Chris Shanley, Shady Side Ave, first of all, I'm surprised that it went out of agenda, but certainly support. My girl is right there, right now, playing soccer on the turf field, and we would like to continue to support it. I'll keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we put it in the front of the agenda just because there were so many people here out of respect for their time.
I see.
But that made you miss the item.
That's all right. I appreciate that you looked out for everyone else. Thank you.
If I could just ask a quick question, and I'll look at the details later on the recording, but has the decision been made and it was announced? Or is it still, in the discussion process?
So we're not a deciding body on this. We're going to be meeting with town management just to understand the process and suggest that grass and artificial turf are both considered with all the pros and cons. We want to make sure the environmental aspects are considered, as well as the use aspects.
And
But
Got it.
we're not in a position to decide anything.
And there should be updates
Yeah.
about potential meetings in the future. If you would like to write the town manager or the select board to share your opinion, they're welcoming letters at this time.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Got you more
Okay.
letters, Wendy.
Just would you want a few more letters to read?
Okay. Any further comments? And otherwise, let's adjourn and call it a day.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming.